Hello, and welcome to episode 106 of Design Curious Podcast. Today on the podcast, I have special guest Jacqueline Green. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Jacqueline is founder, CEO, and chief strategist of Behind the Design, a training and education company that provides interior designers and other creative business owners with tools they need to build profitable businesses. Through comprehensive education, coaching, marketing, and community offerings, Jacqueline and her team empower designers to reach their full potential. Jacqueline is a seasoned commercial interior designer, former college instructor, and highly experienced marketing expert. After working in architectural firms, she knows talented designers and architects grappling with various career and business challenges. With a solid background in business and marketing, Jacqueline realized that she had a unique skill set that would help design firms overcome these pain points and fulfill their deep desire to make a difference and assist others. In 2018, Jacqueline founded Behind the Design, where her mission was and still is to build a stronger design community by reimagining how we educate, train, and support designers after college. So we have a great conversation. I love that she has also a commercial design background, which I know we've focused a lot of residential design on this podcast, but I love talking with all types of designers. And so I think you're really going to love our conversation today. You're now listening to Design Curious, a place where you, creative one, are here to learn about what it really is like to be an interior designer. And I'm your host and mentor, Rebecca Ward. If you're worried about how to succeed in a creative career, if you're ready to learn your next steps to become an interior designer, and if you want the satisfaction of doing something you love every day, you are in the right place. Grab a coffee, a notebook, and let's dig into today's episode. Hi, Jackie. Welcome to Design Curious Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So I was taking a look at your bio, and it was really interesting way to where you are now. So why don't we tell our audience kind of your path to interior design, kind of what sparked you to even get into this field to begin with?
Sure. I started out in marketing. I was in corporate marketing for 15 years and then went out on my own and was like a marketing consultant for about 7 years. And I ended up burning out. And there's a lot of reasons for a burnout, and I talk about it quite a bit, but I burned out and I sat down and thought, okay, what are the things that I love to do? What do I think I would enjoy? Of course, I thought about cooking and I thought about design, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll just go take a class. And I talked to my husband too, and I'm like, I'm going to go take a class over at the design center and see what that turns out. Well, 3 years later, I had a degree. I'd already worked in 3 different architecture firms and was heading in that direction, and I was doing commercial design.
Okay.
Eventually, I would go back to that design school and start teaching as well. So I taught for about 5 years after that. So that kind of all evolved into my business now, Behind the Design, and how we share a lot of knowledge and content and education, because one thing I realized when teaching is that I can only teach students so much, because for a couple different reasons. One, they're getting bombarded by information, and it's really hard to take all that information and really know how to apply it. And two, they don't have the wisdom or knowledge yet to even know how to apply it. There were a few that would be working in the industry, but not to the level of, okay, I could see how I apply this specific thing in this situation. And so I realized there was really a need out there to share our knowledge outside of the traditional education systems, and how do we share that, and how do we help the designers who are now coming up through school so that we really build a stronger design community.
So when you were in school, then are you teaching at the same place that you took classes at?
Yeah, I ended up
fun.
in the same place. Yeah.
Nice. So what got you onto the path of commercial design?
I tried a couple residential projects on the side, and for me, it wasn't a good fit. It felt like I was in the middle of marriages that needed counseling and not needing design. And it was really uncomfortable for me. And I realized in looking at, I started working right away for an architecture firm. And how I did that was I knew the architect. It was a small firm. He needed some help on his marketing. And so essentially, I ended up persuading him to let me come help him with this marketing. And then he needed somebody to do this design work because he didn't have anybody. And
Oh.
so I just started working on projects. And I realized my background in corporate and business actually really applied, and all my branding knowledge really applied to commercial spaces. Is how do we help companies really share their brand, both from an external standpoint and an internal standpoint, and build spaces that are functional, that, yes, they're beautifully designed, but they're also efficient in the way the employees work. How do we build that out so that when clients come in, that they have such a great experience and feel for it? How do we make it so the employees feel that way as well when they come to work every day? And so I really realized that I could relate and understand a lot of the needs of more of the company side of things. I understood budgets. I understand when there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen and how you have to maneuver through a lot of that and the politics of business. And so because of that knowledge I had, I just was naturally drawn there and really loved that.
Okay. That sounds like a really ideal situation that you got into right off the bat because they needed you for marketing, but also then the design really came alongside that. So that was a
Yeah,
great opportunity.
it was an amazing opportunity because I also learned, but I was trained in more of the architectural firm side of things rather
Hmm.
than in a true interior design firm.
Hmm.
So that was also its own little caveat and a little different perspective on things. 'Cause I think I looked at things a little bit more like architects look at things
Okay.
and not as much as design. And so it was kind of an adjustment.
Hmm. So now your company is called Behind the Design, right? And
Yes.
so do you focus then on all kinds of designers,
We
businesses?
do.
Hmm.
Yeah, we really focus on a lot of different creatives. Now, our courses and a lot of our content that we share for free, we really have an interior design spin on those things because I know that industry. And so we really talk about that. But when marketing services and the services that we offer our clients, we talked more around interior designers and architects. We have several, both that are clients of ours, but we also look at things like photographers, or I have a client coming on right now that we are working with they created a liqueur
Ooh.
business. Yeah. And it's a really interesting creative story. And so even though they're in a totally what you would think of, they have a tap room and they have this specific type of business, it's still creative. It still comes from a creative heart. And
Hmm.
so, how do we make sure that's part of that brand? Creativity, I think when we look at creativity, so many designers are incredibly creative, but they may not necessarily be creative on how to market themselves. It's like the resume. I could write somebody else's resume really easily, but if you sit down and made me write, like if you sat down and wrote your own resume, that would be a lot more difficult than writing somebody else's resume because you can see all those great things. But as a yourself, you're like, well, I did work on this project, but I did this. And then you start questioning those things.
Hmm.
And so I think from a creative standpoint, creatives, although they might be really great at design and they may be really great in one area, they still need some support in some of the other areas.
Yeah, definitely. So it's probably easier because you've been in the design world. Like if you're working with an interior designer, I think sometimes there could be creative heads that are butting up against each other. So everybody has their ideas, but you can kind of speak the same language as
Mhm.
an interior designer and understand where they're coming from. And
And,
also, like,
and
yeah.
yeah, I understand the challenges and
Hmm.
how their processes work. And, I think that's why I try to focus this business as we built it so specifically to a certain group, because that's really enjoyable to me. I still get to kind of be in that design world
Hmm.
without being in the design world, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I still got to be a part of that and have those connections, but not necessarily designing spaces anymore, more designing, websites and their social media or their branding or whatever that is.
Hmm. So elaborate a little more on how you went from working for some architects into creating your own business.
I have a son with autism, and so it came down to I needed to be home more. And so
Okay.
I ended up coming home and thought, okay, I got an opportunity to work on a really big project doing all the Revit work for a designer. And this interior designer had been in the industry for 35 years. She was working on and had been selected to work on a big school project for Denver Public Schools. It was 3 different buildings. But the architect, and actually it came from the contractor was requiring it to be in Revit. They were truly using Revit as a BIM software. So they were using it in its full complexity. She did not know AutoCAD. She did not know Revit. And when she needed this kind of support, she'd hire somebody. So somebody I knew from the school recommended me, and I started working for her. And I'm like, that's great. I'm going to do this. I'm going to help other designers. And I can still kind of do that from home and be there for my son when he was going through school. And I can do this other stuff. And then COVID happened. And all of a sudden, everything just stopped, all the commercials. So I had kind of gathered all these projects and clients, and all of a sudden, it all kind of stopped. And I realized, okay, is this really what I'm wanting to do? And so it sort of evolved from there. And along the way, I had kind of been teaching things and sharing that knowledge from teaching I was teaching at that point also at the design school. And I thought, I wonder if I could do this on a bigger scale outside of the school and reach more people. And so the business has kind of evolved. And then eventually I went kind of back to my roots of, I see a need. There's a lot of designers who aren't consistent in their marketing or really struggling. They put a website out and they don't update it for many, many years. And then it doesn't really truly show how amazing their work is. And so it just sort of evolved into where we're at. And right now we're in a really great place. I feel really like we're on the right track. And I think businesses do that, especially as a small business when you're starting up from scratch. You do have to kind of evolve and find those needs in the marketplace. And what you think the need is initially may change over time or may end up just being a little bit different than you originally thought. And so to be flexible and to move along that, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, really good. So what does it look like, say a designer is just starting out in their career, maybe they started their own business. How can they work with you, and what kind of things would you be helping them with?
I'm sure we work with several designers who are solopreneurs and that are just really struggling with doing it all. And we have a course called Hobby to Profitability. How do you pull that? How do you make that passion business that you love so much that you're working a ton of hours into actually a profitable business? And so we talk a lot about mindset. We talk a lot about systems and processes. Those systems and processes that you create within your business are really important when you grow that business. And so if you are constantly having to recreate the wheel, then you're really devaluing what you have to offer. And so when we add those processes and systems into your overall, then you can get things done quicker. You can meet your client's needs quicker. When you hire somebody, they can actually serve the client just the same level that you were serving them. And the client just sees that overall arching of, this is a great organization. It doesn't matter if I work with the interior designer or the principal or the senior interior designer, they all give me the great service. So we really look at that. And then the last part of that is we talk about habits. Your habits and how they tie back into those systems and processes are critical to your success. And I see so many times that a lot of designers are working and working. I have one designer who's doing a great job. She has a wait list. She has lots of people. She wants to expand. She's right at that cusp of, do I hire somebody full-time? Do I not hire somebody full-time? But hold on, I have all this stuff. I have to touch everything. It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
When we build out those processes and systems and we really look at that, you can see, okay, what do I truly have to be a part of and what can I hand off? And then also, like for her, we help her with her marketing. She just wasn't consistent. She'd do really well for a while. And then she gets so busy with her clients that she couldn't continue posting and doing updates to her website or her social media accounts. It just wasn't that priority. The clients are the priority because that's what she's getting paid for. So we just turn that around and help her and give her that support so she knows that part is getting done, and that frees up time for her as well.
Outsourcing. Yeah, there's a big mindset shift going from hobby to profitability. I love that name. Because it's a big arc, really, just like understanding that you're becoming a CEO of your company and you're going to have to outsource some of the hats that you wear. So
Yeah,
that's,
absolutely.
yeah, that's great.
And when we started from scratch, so many of us, and I was this way with my marketing consultant business, I felt like you love it, you're passionate about it, but you end up creating a job for yourself, and a really hard one, by the way, because running a business is hard. Not only are you doing all the client work and design work that you want to do, but then you also have to worry about the bookkeeping and the taxes and
Mm-hmm.
all the other stuff of part of operations, the marketing and the sales. And so it's not an easy job. And when we really look at it, I just see so many designers that are burning themselves out because they're trying to do everything.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think that what's holding them back from outsourcing?
Fear. I think some of it's fear and money. The idea that, okay, I have to go out and spend money for this is always a hard thing to do when you're a small business. Investing in somebody else. I have several clients that have tried outsourcing and then it just didn't go well. And when I really dug into, okay, why did it not go well? A big part of the reason is there wasn't a strategy to begin with. There wasn't a clear, defined role of what those contractors were doing or consultants were doing. So it's really important if you do outsource to maximize and make sure that you are outlining exactly what their roles and responsibilities are within, not only within your contract, but in your meetings, in your analytics, and understanding, okay, they're going to deliver this and I'm going to support them with this. So what is my role? What is the contractor's role? And at the end of whatever the period of time, what is that measurement that we know that we're making progress?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important thing of making sure you establish right up front the strategy, where it's going, what the expectations are, and then when you get the end, measure. Because marketing it's kind of a crazy thing because you can't always tell. Just like social media, you can put some things out there and it might be working great for a few months, and then all of a sudden your viewership goes way down or your engagement goes way down. Like, okay, and you're like, what happened? It was working 3 months ago. Why is it not working now?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of adjusting and playing with it and seeing and testing and saying, okay, let's try this. Is this working better? Instagram, are reels doing better than post? We do a bunch of reels. All of a sudden, they're not doing as well. So we throw in some static posts and they are all of a sudden doing well. You kind of have to play with marketing. And so it's really important to understand what those true analytics are and what you're looking for.
Yeah, and that's why it's really important to have someone probably like you in the sidelines who can actually be paying attention to that while you're actually out designing a project or something, Do you help with, so you help with website and social media. Do you also do like newsletters or things like
We
that?
do. We really focus on the content. So we
Okay.
look at how do we build out your content. We do a lot of writing for our clients. You know, website's one thing, but that content on your website and then the content that you're putting on social, all that should tie together within your brand. So we help you with the brand strategy, your marketing strategy, where you're going, and what you should be focused on. And then we work on each individual client on what that entails. And so where are they at now? Where do they want to go? How are we going to get them? And we really focus on mostly digital marketing. We do have a few clients that want a physical brochure, something they can take when they're out networking or they're
Mm-hmm.
going to trade shows and they want to hand that out. But for the most part, everything we do is digital, but we look at how that content spreads out across every single thing. So instead of just thinking, okay, I'm going to put this post out on Instagram, okay, how can we actually use that also on LinkedIn? Or how can we use that on Facebook? Now, Facebook and Instagram are connected. How
Mm-hmm.
can I take that blog I just wrote and do a quick video on that and put it on YouTube? What can I do with those on Pinterest? I mean, looking at that strategy as a whole, and then
Mm-hmm.
how do you reuse content so that it's across different channels and still going with the SEO so it's all going back to you?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah, and
think
it helps that content have a longer life too. So you're not having to have new content for each platform every single time. It's like you're able to repurpose, which is good.
exactly. I mean, we take a blog post that we write and we create at least 10 reels from that
Mm.
that we can spread out over time. Now, sometimes if it's a, you know, 10 top things that you need to do to market your business. We're going to put those kind of in a row. We do one tip each week. But if it's a different content that's a little bit different, then we can pull that out and reuse it. And if you're doing, like, say you're doing a newsletter for your email list, you can also take that same content or even your blog content and use it and do a newsletter on LinkedIn. Because we think, I mean, LinkedIn is actually up and coming. So many people thought it was just kind of a place where you go and get a job. But think about who's your ideal client. Most of the time, somebody's going to hire your services are professionals and they're going to be on LinkedIn
Yeah.
doing their work, connecting, networking there. So it's a great opportunity. But you can take that same content and put that in a newsletter and send out your newsletter to LinkedIn and build your connections up that way as well. There's a lot of things where you can take that content and cross promote and cross use it so it doesn't feel so weighted on, oh, I have to create more of this, or I have to do more of that. What am I going to do now? And so we really look at that. How does that spread out across everything?
That's really good. Yeah. And I have heard that about LinkedIn. And it makes so much sense. For years and years, I kind of ignored it, but that is where my clients typically are. If they're anywhere, it's like they definitely have a LinkedIn account. So,
They really do.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, so what are some other ways that people starting out can learn from you and kind of get established in their business?
I'm sure. We offer a lot of free resources on our site to help people. And we even have resources out there for students as well, because it came from that teaching world. And I just loved, I loved teaching. I loved the students. And I had a big mix of students. It was about 60-40 split of those that are fresh out of high school versus those that were like me and they had raised families or their kids were getting older and they decided, I want to try something new. I want to go back to school. And so that was a really great mix. And so I've just taken that passion of teaching and just shared my knowledge. So there are a lot of free resources for people that are just getting started. And part of that was when I originally decided to kind of do my own design business, I couldn't find those resources. Now, this has been several years ago, and there's a lot of, now there's podcasts and there's, back then, I think there were only a handful, if a handful of podcasts, but there were, I couldn't really find where designers were really sharing their knowledge. Now, luckily, fast forward, and I know so many, I've met so many people who really are. I was just so lost. I couldn't figure it out. I'd run one business successfully, but I was like, it wasn't the same. I didn't know how to go find clients. I didn't know what I should have done to get my name out there because it was a different audience. And even though I was a marketing expert, it took me a little bit to get through. And so I wanted to make sure I provided that and gave that to other people. Hey, here's how you start. You start by getting out and networking and building your network and the people that you know, because people that you talk to know other people and they know other people, and it's the whole 6 degrees, right? And you end up expanding your business. It's getting out there and being visible. Visibility is huge. I speak on visibility all the time of get out there and be visible. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there and just share your knowledge with other people and share the great things that you have to offer. So often we shy away from being visible because we want to, well, we're afraid, really. We're afraid that we were told as, young kids, oh, you can't talk about yourself. Don't self-promote. Don't do this. Don't do that. And so then when it comes to actually promoting the great things we're doing, we're like, we shy away. Why are we shying away? No, you need to be screaming. You need to be going, hey, I did these great things. Come work with me. Now, there's a difference between that, being excited and really sharing your wins and celebrations versus just being, a hard-nosed salesperson and saying, buy, 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 buy. There's a totally different thing. You want to build a relationship. So those are the things I always tell people networking. I always tell them that they need to be visible. And I always tell them they need to build their brand and their foundation. And their foundation is their brand and their website early on in the process. And when we look at all those are what's really important to really start getting out there and building that business.
And to touch back on networking, do you encourage your students to go through in-person networking, like local events and things like that? think that's even more challenging sometimes than even showing your face on social media for a few people. So,
It really
but
is. I used
yeah.
to be the worst networker ever. I hated it. I would get so sick in my stomach. I would pull up in the parking lot, and I kid you not, I have actually driven all the way to a networking event, got to the parking lot, found a parking spot, got so upset, turned around and drove away without going in.
Oh.
That's how bad I was. It was horrible. Yeah, it was so bad. I just felt like, and I'm a tall woman, and I felt like I was walking into the space and I was sticking, 10 feet higher than everybody else, and I was awkward, and it was just so uncomfortable. And so I had gone through a hard period in my life. My son had gotten sick, and I had to step away from my business for a little bit so I could take care of him. And I thought, okay, how do I want to progress? How do I want to move forward? It's time for me. He's better. He doesn't need me as much. How do I move forward? And I decided I'm going to try this networking event. I'm going to go. Sure enough, I pull up and I have these stomach pains. And I'm like, I'm going to talk to one person, one person. And if I can talk to one person, then I'm done. I can leave. That's it, one person. Well, it just so happens that this organization was having their celebration of women. And it's where they celebrate somebody, their Woman of the Year. And it was so inspiring and such a big celebration. I ended up talking to people and
Oh.
ended up getting involved. And now I sit on the board on that
Oh,
organization.
wow.
But I just had to keep forcing myself. So from there,
Yeah.
I went to another networking event. Now, here's the caveat. There's two things. One, if you're not comfortable in a networking event, you just don't feel like you can really be a part of that, then that might not be the one for you. You might want to try a different one. And the other part is I heard this from somebody, I wish I could remember her name, but she does a lot of studies around body language and talking to people. And she said the best place to stand if you were, awkward or feel awkward at a networking event is right by the bar.
Mm.
Because if you stand, everybody thinks you should stand by the front door and get people as they come in. But think about it, when you walk into a networking event, you're trying to place yourself. You're trying to look around. You're trying to feel comfortable. You're trying to see, is there anybody I know that I can maybe, latch on to at least kind of get me into this? Where if you stand by the bar, people start relaxing after they get a drink. Even if it's a non-alcoholic drink, they'll start relaxing with a drink in their hand and they'll turn around and now they're looking to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So I think
That's
it's
great
just
advice. Yeah.
yeah, I think it totally made sense to me. And I thought, well, I'll just keep doing this. And when you keep doing it, it really does get easier. And it took me about 6 or 8 months. And all of a sudden, I went to a networking event, hopped out of my car, and I'm walking in. And I realized my stomach didn't hurt anymore.
Mm.
I didn't think twice about it. I literally got my parking spot, walked in, and was like, "Hi, I'm Jackie." And that was it. And I realized at that point I was over my fear.
Oh, that's encouraging. I think for a lot of people, maybe still have yet to go to their first one or, are just starting out that it does get better and that we can all be like Jackie someday and just walk right in there and not have any butterflies in our stomach. But
I also think
yeah,
you
I
have to
do think
look at
it's,
it. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, I do think it's a really good avenue to go with marketing, like the in-person touch, just to be able to put a face to the name and all that. So yeah.
I think the in-person is really important. I think coming out of those tough years, we needed a connection with people. I also look at it, don't think about you're just going in there to sell or get a client. Think about how you can connect to people. So instead of thinking, oh, I have to take home 3 business cards that I can follow up with, instead go in and say, oh, if I connect with somebody, because I would always feel bad. I'm like, I don't want to buy this person's product. I don't need it. And then I'd feel bad. It's like, no, I can connect this person with this person and they make a great connection and they might be able to do business.
Mm.
So when we start giving that way, it'll be helpful. And you will eventually find people, business friends. And part of the reason I kept doing the networking and getting through it was I just wanted to be around people in the room that were 10 steps ahead of me in business, that I could learn from, that I could ask for advice or I could, stumble with and say, hey, I'm going through this situation. Have you ever come across this? And that's what really helped.
That's great too, because it is good to have mentors even outside of the industry that you're working in who are just can give great business advice because they're farther on down the road in their business. Yeah.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be within design. It can still apply to something that you're doing, or you can tweak it to apply to what you're doing.
Great. Okay. Well, how can people find you if they want to work with you and learn a little more from you?
Sure. I can be reached at behindthedesign.co.com. So behindthedesignco.com. And that is also our handle on almost every platform is Behind the Design Co. On Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, like YouTube.
You're
So I'm
doing them
trying
all.
to think of all of them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you practice what you preach. So.
Exactly. And let me give you one other advice about that,
Yes,
because I'm
please.
right on off of those social medias. If you're overwhelmed by social media or it's just not your thing, it wasn't my thing either. You have to look at it as a tool and just pick one. Pick one, maybe two, and just focus on those and get a rhythm going on those one or two. And then you can expand from there. And so, like for us, we really went hard on LinkedIn early on, and we really worked on that one. And then we started kind of, okay, that's working. Then we went to Pinterest. And now we're doing this big Instagram push, and we're really building that up. So don't think you have to do it all.
Okay. That's good too. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Jackie. Really good conversation. I loved having you on. And we'll put all of your contact info in the show notes so people can find you. And it's just great talking with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So if you'd like to work with Jacqueline or get in touch with her, ask her a question, we've put all her information in the show notes so you can reach out to her. And then don't forget, there are downloads and quizzes and My Design Mentor. You can get all of that information as well in the show notes. It's all a one-stop shop for you there. And hopefully you enjoyed that interview today. I have many more to come. Another great episode for you next week. So until then, stay creative. Thanks for listening. If you loved this episode, please leave a rating and a review. This helps me reach other curious creatives like you. If you have a topic request or would like to contact me, simply head over to my website, rwarddesign.com, or email me at podcast@rwarddesign.com.